We gone into the long. I can see it from the blood red sky. We got to fight it all, and we race until we see the whites of their eyes. When the rain starts pouring down, revolution's such a lovely sound. I can see the sharks are closing in, and there's blood in the water now. So what you fighting for? This is where we draw the line. This is where we draw the line. I hear your battle cry. I hear your battle cry. Let me hear your battle cry. Let me hear your battle cry.
Where the show's... I'm having a guest. Wow. Okay, cool. The hits just keep on coming. I think right now our live feed is being fun. I don't know if that's because of the... Okay, let's see. It looks like it's working. Yeah, it's working on YouTube. Facebook might not be working. It's being slow. Should come up. Hopefully we get it. It happens. That's part of the fun of doing it live. Right. So anyway, episode number 9, season 2. I know the audio version will be good. So what are we talking about today? Well, we've been talking about this season. We've been talking about moves. We've been talking about reading your orders. We've been talking about PCSing, how you get your family moved, how you get your household good moves. We've talked about living on base. We've talked about living off base. But there are a few other types of moves, too, that we really haven't talked about. So I want to get into those. And what we're getting into today is something called geo-batch. That's what we call it. That's slang for geo-bachelor. And basically what that is, and I have an article here. It's from PCS Grades. I think it explains it really well. And here's what it says. Would you ever choose to live apart from your spouse in different houses? In the military community, this happens more often than you might think. So often, in fact, that there is a term specific to it. Geographical bachelor, or geo-batch, for short. The military makes being geo-bachelor hard to do, so it's not often the best option, but sometimes, and for some families, it is. So we're going to be talking to somebody who's had to deal with this and is currently doing it. But I just want to point out that it also says, and for anybody who knows a little bit about military and maybe they're asking, like, is that the same as an unaccompanied move? No, it's not. So a service member becomes a geo-bachelor when they PCS without their family voluntarily, splitting the family in 2 different locations. So you choose to do so. This is different from getting unaccompanied orders or going TDY for a training school. That's normally due to length, right? If your school's short, they're not going to move your family, but you can also get unaccompanied orders. We all know that I'll be moving to Spain. It's a 3-year billet. I could have went unaccompanied. It would have been a 2-year billet. I didn't want to do that. And because that's a whole different type of move, I will tell you, remember we're on a 2-week schedule right now. So our next episode won't be till March 7th. Keep that in mind. But on March 7th, a good friend of the show, AOC Chief Jeremy Snyder, will be back on as he is currently on unaccompanied orders. And we're going to talk about that. So today we're going to talk about geo-bachelor. 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk about unaccompanied orders. And let's get into it. So my guest today is somebody who actually made chief when I did. Not that that matters. He is a chief. He is a hospital corpsman. And for those of you who don't know what that is, like always, I'm going to show you the video that talks about hospital corpsman. I'm going to show you the basic Navy video that you can find on YouTube. Really, you just type in Navy and any job that you want to find, and you look for the one put out by the Navy, and it'll give you a pretty good rundown, a general idea of what that job is. But I will tell you, and when we bring in our guest, I'm sure he can speak on it too, especially because of what he does, that hospital corpsman is one of our most diverse jobs in the Navy. However, I'm going to go ahead and show you this video. For those of you out there in podcast land that are listening to this after the fact, well, you should have watched it live. But you can look up the video. You're going to hear it, but it's not quite the same as seeing it. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up, let you see that, and then we'll bring in our really special guest. So let me get this up first. This is the Navy's video about hospital corpsmen. So let's take a look.
I went out to Afghanistan, and you hear a gunshot wound to the head and you think that person's DOA. When they came into our hospital, there was a 98% success rate. We as corpsmen cross that line of medical assistant to nurse practitioner to doctor and everything in between, and bring it all into one very big hat.
There are many different specialties within the hospital corpsman rate, which include dental technicians, radiology technicians, pharmacy technicians, behavioral health techs. You have physical therapists like myself.
The capabilities are exactly the same as a private practice. In the military, there's no competition for economics, so we can give them the best care that they deserve.
I wanted to join the Navy to be something better than I am and do something great with my life.
I went to my corpsman school, and then I went to surgical tech school.
They specialize, and then they get stationed at their first command.
And I've gotten my associates within 2 years, and I'm working on my bachelor's, and I don't think I would have had those opportunities.
Not only do we get to do medicine, which is what I initially joined the Navy to do, but we also get to propel out of a helicopter. So, you can't really beat that.
The most rewarding part of my job is having that sailor look at me and say, thank you.
So that is the video that the Navy put out about hospital corpsmen to kind of give you an idea. As you can see, very diverse. And, instead of me talking about it, I want to bring in our special guest. Let me get him pulled up. I have to figure out how to do everything. Okay, it's been a while since I had a guest, right? So sometimes I forget how to do it. All right, let's see if we can pull him in. Again, this is my special guest. He is a HMC or Chief Hospital Corpsman, Eric Runyon. Let's see if we can pull him up and he can hear me and everything. All right. Chief, can you hear me? He's got to make sure he unmutes. Otherwise, you guys would have heard him the whole time during everything. Hold on. Technical difficulties. While he's fixing that, I just want to put out, again, I'm not sure why the video kind of froze up there. I thought it was just that Facebook issue we've been having, but it seems to be working fine now. Again, I know we use Facebook a lot because I can put out more information there. But if you ever really want to watch, honestly, at this point, I would suggest YouTube. So, oh, there you are. I think I can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Lima Charlie. All right, so you are a Chief Hospital Corpsman. What's that?
Yeah, so it's an honor to be on here, and thank you again, Brad, for bringing me on.
Whoa.
So,
it's Chief, man. It's Chief. I'm just kidding. Yeah, go ahead. I'm just asking you.
Hospital corpsman, like you said, I think you nailed it pretty well as far as being diverse. Mm-hmm. I've been a sailor for 20 years, and I have 0 sea time. So I have not stepped foot on a ship ever. So and that's one of those things. We talked about that in recruiting some too. When me and Petty Officer Levesque would talk with people, there are jobs, when you think of the Navy, what do you think of? You think of boats, you think of the ocean, but there are a few jobs, and hospital corpsman being one of them, where you may not. Now, has there been... Okay, so as a hospital corpsman, you have opportunities too. But my experience, I was on destroyers, smaller ships, right? We're talking, 300 people-ish.
And of those 300 people, we would have anywhere between maybe 1 to 3 hospital corpsmen. That's for the entire crew. We're talking from captain down. Those people, those 1, 2, maybe 3 people are who take care of you medically the whole time. So a lot of times on sea duty, you're not talking like that's going to be the first place you go as a hospital corpsman, because at that point, like, you're the doctor. You are what we call the IDC, or independent duty corpsman. And so most of the time, especially hospital corpsmen, if you go blue side as opposed to green side, which we'll talk about in a minute, interesting little thing, you're going to cut your teeth. You're going to learn your skills at the naval hospitals long before you go to a sea duty, because you have to be more versed, more well-rounded. Would you say that that's a correct statement?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially being on a small boy, you usually have one IDC, independent duty corpsman, and then we call them baby docs.
Yep.
Usually kind of brand new to the Navy, getting their feet wet on a small boy.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things, and we'd say that too. You're independent duty corpsman. Doesn't matter if it was like a first class in E6, if it was a chief, E7, senior chief, you just called him doc. And then, you might have like a second class, maybe a third class, and that was baby doc. But I mean, that's who got me my medicine. That's who, I had stitches at one time. They took them out there. Now, a little bit different when you go to, say, the big decks. Wow, slip that in there. Big decks, like the carriers, stuff like that, where, I mean, they can do surgery and all kinds of stuff out to sea. But again, we're talking this is a floating city. They have Starbucks, for God's sakes. So, it's very diverse. Now, one thing that I think a lot of people, when it comes to hospital corpsmen, don't realize, everybody hears the different branches. And I was just talking to an old retired guy today, and another 2 retired guys, one old retired guy from the Navy, one from the Air Force. I was playing disc golf with them, and we were picking on each other. And people heard it, all the branches pick on each other. There's all that funny stuff. But do you know why we pick on each other? Because we've earned the right to. At the end of the day, you've still done more than somebody who hasn't, and we pick on each other. But I don't know about you. I may pick on the Air Force, but if I'm in a bar with an Air Force buddy and somebody who's not military starts picking on him, I might have to break his jaw. So I've earned the right to pick on him. Now, if you pick on a Coast Guard, I'll probably just let you do that, but that's different. Yeah. But again, so what people don't realize is that the Marines and the Navy work so very closely together all the time. We really do. And in fact, that the Marines don't have their own medical staff. Those are Navy hospital corpsmen who are out with the Marines. And most Marines, if you say the word doc, most of them will say, God bless a doc, right? So that is a whole different thing. That is FMF, right? When you're with the Marines.
Yep. So obviously you can tell I am currently with the Marine Corps, wearing the MARPAT, right? The Marine Corps uniform. And FMF stands for Fleet Marine Force.
And it's a whole different side. So in the Navy, if you know somebody who's a hospital corpsman, or you're talking to somebody, maybe you don't, we have a tendency to talk in slang and these different words that people are like, what are you talking about? We call it green side. So obviously we've changed uniforms, but, Navy used to wear the blue camo. So if you were a hospital corpsman that was staying, Navy side, you were blue side. If you were with the Marines, because you were in that uniform, we called it green side. And there's other little things, you got to wear that uniform. As you guys can tell, he has his anchors on this uniform, but they're the pin-on ones, and they're black. So sometimes people are like, whoa, you can't, what's that? You can only wear those if you're in that uniform. And I know that obviously from being in the Navy, and one of my sponsors when I went through the chief season was an FMF chief who gave a set to my son, Logan. He has a set, and she told him he was allowed to wear them, but I would never be allowed to wear them. So, so yeah, there's subtle differences. So now when you come in, how did you go FMF? Was that like right out of MEPS? How did that come about?
So I came in 2003, when the push into Iraq happened. And so they were
I was still
trying
in high school, if that makes you feel old.
Oh, it does, especially with these young kids every day. And so went through boot camp, Great Lakes, went through at that time our we call it core school was also in Great Lakes.
Oh,
And then
that's back when it was still in Great Lakes.
oh yeah.
So it's on the other side. It's not active now, but I will tell you, I think it's every branch, any medical, everybody now. It's all in Texas, and it's actually on
Yep.
an Army base.
Yeah, it's in San Antonio, Texas, where everybody
Mhm.
trains together, trying to get that uh, joint service,
Right. So you have Navy
integrated.
hospital corpsmen, you have your Army combat medics. It's they're all there. It's like separate schoolhouses, but it's all on the same base, right? It's like kind of the same training pipeline.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then after you graduated core school, your next step was at that time Field Medical Service School, now what they call Field Medical Training Battalion. And there's one on the East Coast in Camp Lejeune where I'm at right now, and then there's one on the West Coast in Camp Pendleton.
Now, Camp Pendleton, Camp Lejeune, that's camp. That's Marines, right? So just like in the video, if you guys were watching the hospital corpsman video, it talks about the specialty, right? And you really can do all that. You can be in physical therapy, you can be in surgery, you can be a farm tech, and sometimes if you're working in the hospitals, you might fill a couple of those roles. You're learning the different things. When you go FMF, and there's a whole nother one too that we haven't talked about, which is ATF. And those are, okay, so when we talk about our spec war, special warfare, you talk about the SEALs, SWIC, Navy divers. Those, each team has their own doc as well. Now, why is it separate? Well, those hospital corpsmen still have to maintain the same physical standards because, look, if you're going to be helping SEALs, right, Navy SEAL, you got to keep up with them, right? Or you can't be the one falling out when they need you, right, Doc? So we have that as well. So there's all these different specialties. So when you go greenside and then you go to one of the camps, it's a whole different thing. So you're Navy, but you're really under kind of the Marine umbrella. And to get your FMF pin, can you hold your FMF pin up? FMF hospital corpsmen are extremely proud of that because it's hard. You have to really know both your Navy stuff, but also the Marine side of things to be able to even qualify for that. Am I correct?
Yeah, so, fun fact about the hospital corpsman rating, it's the most decorated rating out there, and most Medal of Honor winners. And so, we wear the FMF pin, the Fleet Marine Force pin, with pride because we know there are many sailors that have came before us, and some of them lost their life, defending the freedom that we have. And so we know how much bloodshed has been done wearing this pin and
being spilled. It's hard to say without sounding like bad, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And trying to honor those men and women that have gone before us wearing the FMF pin on their chest.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and I may be wrong. I forgot to look this up, but I'm trying to think of one that maybe like common people would know. And Marcus Luttrell was a hospital corpsman originally, right? He was at HMATF. And Marcus Luttrell is if you've seen the movie Lone Survivor with Mark Wahlberg, it's about him, and he was their doc. Like, he started out as a hospital corpsman. That's what he came in as. He was a hospital corpsman, right?
Yeah, and so back in the day that I came in, you had to have a rate specific before you went to buds, and being a corpsman was one of them because they needed the corpsman to go with the team. And I think it was about 2006, 2007 timeframe is when they moved over to their own rate. So
The
special
ATF,
operator.
Yeah.
Yeah. So SOSBEOD.
Oh, right.
And,
yeah.
And so those kind of legacy guys that held on to their medical quals were still corpsmen, but now they were just, special operators.
Right. Now, with you being like, because you're FMF and you wear that uniform when you're with the Marines, just to, I don't know that anybody will ask this, but just in case, right? That's the only Marine uniform. I mean, and it still says U.S. Navy. He still has all of his same patches, but there you go. It's a Marine uniform. Like, you're not in there dress blues or anything like that, any formal uniform. You're still in Navy uniform. It's just that one so that you look the same.
So, yes, but you can choose to go Marine Corps regs.
Really?
Yeah, and if you go Marine Corps regs, you cannot wear their dress uniform, but you can wear their service uniform.
Oh, wow. See, I've been in the Navy a hot minute, and I will tell you that doing this show, I still learn things. I didn't know that. It's just not something, could I have looked it up? Sure, but it's not something that I deal with every day. So, look, I learned something new. And speaking of that, I don't know if Petty Officer Levesque is still in Hawaii or not, or if he'll see this, but I want to give a shout out, Petty Officer Levesque. You all love him, miss him. And we always talk about, hey, it's the world's finest Navy, world's largest Navy. But at the same time, it's also a small Navy, which is funny because, Chief, you were telling me when we got on our call to do our little sound check prior to, he said, hey, I was telling my guys that I was going to be on this podcast. They should listen. And sure enough, he goes, there was somebody that you recruited that's one of my guys. I said, no way. And I think we talked about him before. I don't remember if he was on the show. We talked about him before. And it's a funny story because, remember, everyone, Petty Officer Levesque was from Massachusetts. So we're recruiting in the Midwest, middle of Indiana, which is where his wife was from, but not Petty Officer Levesque. And he goes out to this kid's home. He's talking to him, and he lived out on a farm. Petty Officer Levesque had never seen a live chicken up close, and I know he still has this picture. And he has a picture because he was holding this chicken because he'd never seen one. And it just wild full circle that he's one of your guys. I had no idea, and although we're a very large, and I will tell you, I know this has happened to you in your 20 years. Somebody will hear you're in the Navy and they'll be like, oh, do you know so-and-so? No.
Oh, yeah.
But then at the same time, you'll go somewhere and be like, holy crap, I know that guy. I know that guy. I know that guy. It's just crazy. We have a comment that's actually coming from Twitter. If you wear the service uniform of the Marines, do you wear the rank, or do you still, if you're in their uniform, or do you still wear like the chief anchor? How does that work?
So with the service uniform, you have a long sleeve and a short sleeve.
Right.
And it's kind of, I don't know if you remember utilities.
I didn't wear them, but I know what they are.
So you'll wear the patches on your sleeves.
And you wear the Navy patch. You don't wear the Marine rank.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So I would wear the 3 chevrons and a rocker,
right,
just like we have on our dress uniform,
right,
but tan with the caduce in the middle.
I just happen to have one set in here, so obviously this is a fire controlman. Oh, it's hard to see because of the glare. So like this, mine's gold now because I hit 12 years. Even though everybody gets them now, whatever. That's a whole different subject. I earned mine. But yeah, so he would still wear this if you chose to wear that service uniform. I don't know that I've ever seen a hospital corpsman, even FMF, that wears that uniform. Like, have you ever? Is that like, because it's just like a personal decision, right?
Yeah, it's a personal preference. You get young, motivated sailors that love the Marine Corps. Like, when I once was a young sailor with the Marines, you get in real close with them, close-knit family, and you become one.
Yeah.
And then you decide to go Marine Corps reg, so you submit special paperwork. They supply the uniform for you, so you just go to the PX. You're able to pull it off the shelf, and then finding patches is probably the hardest part of that, especially chief patches to go with the service uniform
Because
is
it's
the
like
hardest.
a different color, a little bit. It has
Yeah,
to, yeah,
so the whole thing is khaki.
yeah.
And then you'll sew them on your sleeve. But it's when you see a corpsman wearing that, you kind of do a double take, and you're
Yeah.
like, "Holy mackerel!"
Yeah, like what is that? What is that? So yeah, so FMF Corpsman. I just want to talk about that for a minute. I know it's not the point of our episode, but it's very interesting information, and I think it's something that a lot of people don't know about, don't know it's a thing. Thank you for that question too. That came from Twitter from Decaf Bubble. That's their screen name. But I would have never thought to even ask that. It's a really interesting question. Same thing. I've never seen a hospital corpsman in that uniform. So yeah, how does that work? So you're an E7, which in the Navy, we all know is a chief petty officer. Now, every branch has an E7. So, but what is the equivalent? What's an E7 in the Marines?
It's a gunnery sergeant.
There you go. So if you know Marines, when we talk like chief petty officer, if you were trying to know what that was as far as Marines, it's a gunnery sergeant. Or what you hear in movies and stuff is us gunny. Old gunny.
Yeah, or gunny for short, right? Gunny Ermy is probably one of the most popular ones.
Really? Gunny Ermy?
Right, from Full Metal Jacket.
Well, yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. Because he's because of all of his shows and stuff that he did afterwards. He was in a ton of movies actually, but most people know him from Full Metal Jacket. Absolutely. So, anyway, so just a little background on you. Obviously, you said you've been in 20 years now.
Yeah, 20 in a couple months.
You retired. You put in them papers. What you doing?
Depends on the next move. So
I feel you.
If the Navy can get me back up to Virginia Beach, where my family is currently at, I would be more than happy to do 3 more years. And if they can't, then my papers will probably be dropped.
So here's this is for you and anybody who's in the Navy who's trying to make a decision. I had a really good senior chief once that told me this, and I was like, that's a good way to look at it. So sometimes in the military, like we've talked about it with orders, like I went over my Navy assignment, stuff like that. You do, believe it or not, and going through A school, you have some say in where you're going to go. It's not what everybody thinks. Like when you think of military, like they just tell you where to go and that's where you go. Now, did that happen to me? Yes. Does that happen to people? Sometimes, yes, it does. But when you don't get what you want, it's hard on people mentally. And I remember something was going on, and I was telling the senior chief I was just mad about it, and he wasn't getting the orders that he wanted, so he was going to get out. And so I asked him, I said, so are you saying that I should get out? He said, no, that's not what I'm saying. He said, I have 20 years in. If you don't have 20 years in yet, I don't want to use a bad word, because what he said is you're kind of still the Navy's B word. I don't know even a polite way to say it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And he goes, but if you've given them the 20 and they're no longer, if they're not going to work with you, then it's time to go. I'm like, okay, like that's, that makes sense, but until you've given that 20, like you do still owe them, like so I definitely can understand what you're saying. You're at that point in your career where if they're like, hey, no, we're not going to do that. All right, well, I'm going to get out. And by the way, I forgot to preface this since I'm interviewing somebody who's still active and I'm active. Understand that everything on this show is my opinion and Chief Runyon's opinion. It's our opinion. It is not the opinion of the Navy or our respective commands. We're simply trying to get information out for people. We're not sponsored by the Navy to do this in any way, and in no way do we want it to be detrimental to our careers. So, we're just trying to get some information out that's hopefully helpful. We haven't been briefed by a PAO or anything like, so this is just to help people, and hopefully it does. So, you've been in 20 years, and we're going to get to the family thing, because like you said, your family Where are you at? Before we get into the GeoBatch thing, where are you at right now?
So I am currently stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
So North Carolina, family's in Virginia, which we're going to get to what that means in a minute. But where are you originally from, Chief?
I'm originally from a small town in New Jersey called Hopatcong.
New Jersey. Great. All right, so you're originally from New Jersey, been in 20 years, joined back 2003. Now family-wise, was that, if you're supposed to have a family, the Navy would issue it to you. I hear that all the time. But, have you known your wife forever? You meet her in the military? Is she like high school sweetheart? How'd that come about?
So, being young and wanting to deploy and see the world,
Don't get yourself in trouble if she sees this later.
Yeah. I actually waited pretty long in my career to settle down and have a family. So me and my wife have been recently married for 3 years now, but been together for about 8.
Oh, okay. Great. So again, you're here on Behind the Helm, episode 9 of season 2. We're here with special guest, Hospital Corpsman, Chief Hospital Corpsman, HMC. I always say it the way it's written, but it's Chief Hospital Corpsman, or HMC, Eric Runyon, who's been in 20 years. He's FMF. We talked about that, so make sure you go back and listen. But like I always ask, make sure you smash that like button, share this feed. Hopefully this information helps somebody out there. Make sure you go back and listen to the old episodes. They're cataloged. You can watch the old episodes. You can listen to them on Spotify. You do all those things. Help me get this information out there. Do all those algorithmic things that help this information get out there. Again, I don't make money off of this. This is out of the goodness of my heart. I do have one. All right. So what we were going to talk about today was a term that in the military we know as GeoBatch, which is slang for GeoBachelor, which is also slang for geographical bachelor. Okay. So we kind of talked about it, right? So we talked about PCS orders. We talked about moving your family. And I kind of read this thing here where it said, when you GeoBatch, what you're doing is you have orders and you choose voluntarily to go to your station and leave your family where they are. Now, I know you have your reasons. I'm going to read from here the common reasons families choose to GeoBatch, and then I want to hear your reasons and see if it may be one of these. So choosing to GeoBatch is difficult. We can agree with that. I mean, you're away from your family. That's tough to do. Families who go this route often don't have another choice. There are a few common reasons the military families will choose to GeoBatch. There's 4. Let's see what these are. To keep their children in the same school, especially juniors and seniors who want to graduate from their current high school. It makes sense. So the spouse can keep their job. To care for ailing parents or other family members if you got problems there, or because of a custody agreement that won't allow them to move their children. So, unless it's too personal, you decide to GeoBatch. You're in Carolina compared to Virginia, which isn't too far. We're not talking like Virginia to San Diego, but still, you're without your family. So what was kind of your deciding factor on that? Why'd you guys decide to do that?
So it's pretty funny that you mentioned that, it's not San Diego to Virginia. And before I got these orders, I almost got orders to San Diego. and so I was actually almost stationed out in San Diego, where my wife and son are in Virginia.
That would have been hard.
It would have been catastrophic and, probably not great for the marriage or my relationship with my son. But luckily I was able to call in a favor from a friend and was able to get stationed down here in North Carolina. So the biggest decision to GeoBatch is that my wife is a Norfolk city attorney. So she's an attorney for the city of Norfolk, and she has her career. And like I said, I had waited to settle down and have a wife and have a son because I wanted to do those cool those cool things.
Without
And
fear
so,
of the family, yeah, I feel you.
and so, with me being so close to the end with retirement and my wife having a government job with government benefits,
Mm-hmm.
even though that decision was super hard to make, we decided that I would geobatch down here in North Carolina so that way she can have her career as well. And, it's time to put my career kind of on the back burner because it's um, almost to an end.
Yeah, you're
So
drawing to the end of yours, and soon it'll be her turn to take care of your old ailing self.
absolutely push me around in my wheelchair.
Heck yeah! Even if you don't need it, push me. And if you guys if anybody has seen what we post on Facebook, I've posted some stories and pictures of the first one. I think it was yesterday. I posted of you, your wife, and your son, and today was of you and your son. Cute kid, still young. How old's your son?
So he's about 2.5 right now.
Mm-hmm. So he's starting
And
to get to that age where it's like, what's going on? That's tough.
oh, absolutely. There's nothing that warms my heart. Like you said, I'm surprised I have one, but uh, when I leave work. Usually we have formation around noon and get cut early on Fridays. So again, I'm thankful that Virginia is only about 3.5 hours away.
Mm-hmm.
So right when we get cut Friday, I drive home to be able to pick them up from daycare, and nothing again warms my heart more than when I walk through the daycare door, and then he hears or sees me, and he goes, my son's name is Jackson. And he'll be like, Jackson's daddy, Jackson's daddy. And he just comes running up to me and gives me the biggest hug.
That's awesome, man. I'm glad that you're at least close enough. But I mean, out of curiosity, that drive home or that drive to your family, like how far is that?
It's about 200 miles one way, so about 3.5 hours total.
Depending on traffic and this and that. Yeah, it's but hey, you got to do what you got to do, right? There was another comment on Twitter. This isn't necessarily directly to you, but it says, I've heard a few times, and it might just be some scuttlebutt, little Navy vocabulary for you. That means like rumor. But I heard if you go to Bahrain, you will always go geobatch. And what's funny is if you tune in 2 weeks from now, March 7th, the chief that's going to be on with me, Chief Jeremy Snyder, is currently in Bahrain, and he's on unaccompanied orders, but they weren't originally unaccompanied. You can take a family with you. It just depends. But I think that is a little bit of scuttlebutt. There are extenuating circumstances, but you can go to Bahrain with your family. I know people who've gone to Bahrain with their family. I think it really kind of depends on what you're going there for. But 2 weeks from now, March 7th, mark it on your calendar, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Behind the Helm, episode 10 with Chief Jeremy Snyder. No big deal. Smash the like button, share this feed, do all those things, hit the bells, whatever. We're actually going to talk about that. And that's a great point. And that's part of the reason that I continue to do the show, because like you said, you've heard that. Is it just a rumor? I'm not really sure. So if you have an opportunity to take Bahrain orders and you have a family, is it worth doing? And that's kind of what we try to do here on the show. It doesn't always work out, but hopefully get you those answers. It might be 2 weeks before I get you the answer, but if you tune in, I'll make sure that it's there. So thank you for that question. I really appreciate it. Another thing that it says here with GeoBatch, right? And this is something that I never really thought of, and you might be able to tune in. And of course, anybody out there who's watching on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch, or if you watch it later and you have something to add, please put those comments in so that if people see it later, if you have experience with it, by all means, please. The whole point is to help people. But what this says here, GeoBatch, 2 households. Right? It says one of the most complicated elements of GeoBatch is splitting into 2 separate households. The family will probably stay in the house they are currently in. However, if the family is currently living in base housing, they will need to move off of it because the active duty member is choosing to go geo-batch. Cha-ching, expensive. So your service member may or may not be authorized a room in the barracks. If not, the service member will need to rent or buy a house off base. Again, another expense. During geo-batch situations, you're looking at 2 housing payments with only 1 BAH. At this point, many geo-bachelors look for a roommate to share a furnished apartment, or, you know, something where you're doing what you can because you're still supplying back home. Now, obviously, your wife, having her career, has a pretty decent job. Hopefully you guys aren't struggling with that. But when you decided to go geo-batch, was that kind of tough to come to terms with? Like, you know, how are we going to do this?
Yeah, and it's great that you mention that and bring that up, because that is one of the things. As a geo bachelor, it does put some financial stress on the household, right? Maintaining a mortgage, you know, again, since I'm so close to retirement, I will most likely retire and move back to Virginia with my family. So I have my forever home in Virginia, and down here, I rent a room from a gunnery sergeant that was actually geo-batching at the time.
Yeah.
And so, and I think it was about 2014 when the Navy got rid of geo-batching housing on base or barracks.
Where it was a separate, I remember that. Like, so you had the regular barracks, and then there would be in certain places, like, hey, this is the geo-batch, quote unquote, barracks housing, like kind of apartments, to where you're not having to pay for a room or anything, and you could be a higher rank when normally you wouldn't be in the barracks, but you kind of had like this kind of small apartment, so you didn't have to have that secondary expense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, going back, and I remember, you know, some of the old crusty chiefs that were geo-batching, they would be resident advisors in the barracks and basically live rent free in the barracks as long as they did their residential advisor role, while, you know, maintaining a house or a, you know, mortgage wherever their family was at. And again, 2014, the military altogether had gone away with it. So now when I received orders here, I called up and obviously educated myself and realized that there are no longer geo-batch quarters available. And so then I had to look for a townhome
or something. Yeah, you had to find somewhere to go. Yeah.
Right. And one of the key factors was how much was rent, because again, maintaining a mortgage in Virginia and then paying rent down here can get pretty costly.
Now, we've talked about moving. We've talked about like BAH. You're hearing us say that again. That's basic allowance for housing. Anybody can see that. It's there. I mean, you go online, you can look up any rank based on your rank and how many years you've been in and whether you have dependents or not, how much we get for that. Now, the thing is that BAH is based off of the zip code, but it's based off of the zip code where the orders say you are. So it's touch and go depending on your situation. So if you're unaccompanied, it's different because it's where your family is. If you're like TDY, where you're going to a school, you're going to continue to receive BAH for your family, where your family is located, because it's to provide a home. However, since Geo Bachelor is voluntary, you're going to receive BAH for where you, as a service member, are stationed. Now, could that work out? It could. It depends, right? So when I went from Virginia to Indiana, the cost of living in Indiana was much lower. So I took a huge pay cut, but it didn't really affect me. So let's say like my family was living in Indiana and I geo-batched to Virginia. Well, really, I could be, if I found a place to stay, you know, I could be making more money. But you're still going to have a place to stay. And you don't want to be that guy that's like staying with a buddy rent free while you're on orders, you know? So it can be a challenge because it's a voluntary choice. So they're going to give you the BAH from where you're ordered to go, right? Like if you would have gotten those orders to San Diego, man, you'd be making some money, right? But you'd also have to find a place to stay, so you definitely wouldn't be seeing your family. That'd be very hard. So, there are these common challenges, and it can be lucrative, but you got to think of, and just to go into a few of they list some of the common challenges, and I think we've kind of hit some of them here. The very first one it says is marital and parenting challenges due to geographical separation. We talk about that with deployments, right? Hey, you go on deployment, you're away, you miss things that your kids do. You're not there for them. Maybe your spouse is going through stuff like financially having to take care of everything. You're not there. So I guess the one good thing is that, you're not deployed. So you have look, we're talking to each other on Facebook right now, right? Like,
Yep.
So you have like this, especially over COVID and stuff, you get all this video calling. So it's a little easier, but still you're not physically there to help. So it's almost like you're deployed. Your wife is having to take care of your son without you there. And that can be a big challenge and a decision factor, right? So go ahead.
And you definitely hit the nail on the head right there. It might not be a financial decision, but again, my wife is at home with a 2.5-year-old, almost as a single parent,
right?
Having to deal with him. And then, one thing as well is, kids get sick.
Yeah.
And so, if I am not taking leave to go home to help her, she's using up her sick days at work to stay at home with my son because he cannot go to daycare. And so, and that becomes kind of a burden as well, or a strain on the marriage.
And can become another financial burden too, because,
Absolutely.
we only have so many leave days, but, depending on where you work or where your spouse works, if they even have sick days that they can take, they have sick days where they're paid, like, okay, good, until they get sick, or maybe they don't have sick days at all. So then then it becomes a day of no pay. So, these are some of the things that if you're looking at going geo-batch, and that's an option for you and your family, because, look, maybe you're a young family and your spouse is, first off, you should have had the conversation before you got married. All right, it's a military. We're probably going to have to move. But if they're like, I can't leave home, these are some of the things that you should sit down and talk about prior to your decision, to understand that these are things that are going to come up. And, look, we're guys, we're dads. So, you get to go home on the weekends, maybe every weekend, if you're lucky, every other weekend. So, you have a boy, you have a son, I have a son. So when we don't get to see him, when we do see him, what we want to do, we're going to cause havoc. Boys are going to be boys. All right. So does that take any more stress off the mom or the spouse? It might add more. So these are the, stuff you got to think about. The next one it says, and we definitely hit this one, was financial issues, including, paying for 2 households, and only receiving the 1 BAH. We definitely talked about that. This is a good one too. Just something kind of, you wouldn't necessarily think of. All right. So you have a house, you have a furnished house, right? And what if you don't, you got to rent a room, or you're going to rent an apartment? Now you have to find furniture for that household, right? You got to have a bed to sleep on, so now you're furnishing 2 households too. It could be another financial burden.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I looked at too when I was looking for places, is looking for fully furnished,
yeah,
right, to make things a whole lot easier. And that way I'm not lugging things from Virginia back down to
that too,
North Carolina.
Yeah.
I do want to add, like, GeoBatch can be beneficial if you have, if your spouse or whomever has family in that area.
Yeah.
That you're stationed in, and they can help out, like, and maybe that's why you don't want to move the family, because you have that network of friends and family that are in that duty station area, like that can be beneficial for you too. Especially if you're going to go to a platform that is deployable and you might be spending 6 months gone, you have that family network or that friend network where your family is that can help out, especially if your spouse gets sick or if
Yeah.
your child gets sick.
You should always, we talked about it last, 2 weeks ago when we talked about on-base housing and compared to off-base housing. And I said, regardless, on base is a whole different thing, but even off base, like getting involved in your community and meeting people. Because, if you have to move with the military, you don't have that hometown, small town type of thing anymore. So, I would say, most military members understand that, and most military spouses do too. So there are those type of support groups as well. So always make sure, don't be a hermit. If you and your spouse, you move into an area, go to MWR events that are on base, or go to, I'm not saying, hey, you two go out to the club and hit the bars and like meet people or what, but I'm just saying, like, meet some people. And then the other one that it lists here, and I mean, we pretty much hit this one pretty good too, is just being physically apart, right? Every military family knows how tough it is to be separated during deployments or TDY, but geo-batching is a separation by choice, adding a layer of complexity. You're choosing as a family to be separated, and the problem is that once you make that decision, it's kind of like the decision is made, and hopefully it doesn't come back to, bite you, because then you're thinking to yourself, like, this really sucks. We chose to do this. Why did we do this? And, you don't want it to cause friction in your marriage, or friction with, like your son is young, but like if you have older, like adolescent kids that maybe they're at that age where maybe they should understand, but it's hard to, right? Why did you choose to leave me here? That can be hard, just the physical separation. You have to be very secure, I think, in your relationship, and have a lot of trust in each other too. That your wife's not going to sell the house and disappear, and you're going to come back one week and it's just gone. Or that she has to, trust that the weekend that you don't come home because you have drill or whatever, that you actually have drill and you're not out bar hopping with the young Marines or whatever, So it's definitely one of those things that you really need to, I think, sit down as a family and really discuss before making that decision, because it's voluntary. Thoughts on that?
Oh, I mean, you're 100% correct. You think you have a great relationship. Now, again, be separated for X amount of months / years. I'm going on 2 years now geo-batching, right? And again, granted, I get to go, home most weekends unless
Yeah, you got lucky, right?
Right. Or I'm out in the fields where I'm doing a field op, or, we just came back from a training evolution in Yuma, Arizona, where I was gone for 2 months. But, you think you have a strong relationship, and then you geo-batch, and, it makes things difficult.
Yeah.
There's no easy way about it. One of the things I tell my sailors is, when I'm home, I'm thinking about work, and when I'm at work, I'm thinking about home.
Yeah. It's hard to separate it, especially when you're not seeing it every day. And imagine, like we were talking about, you almost got those orders to San Diego. Right now, like you said, you're in a lucky situation where if there's not anything major going on, yeah, it could be a 3 to 4 hour drive, but you're getting to see your family. You're getting to see your home, that familiarization of this is my home. But, if you're in San Diego, like if I would have decided to go unaccompanied to Spain, me and my wife talked about it. Since it was 12 months shorter, she had said, like, is that something maybe we should do? No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be without my family. Because in that 2 years, would she be able to maybe visit or whatever? Sure. But that it'd be really hard to do. Obviously that's a lot bigger jump, but also anybody who's on the East Coast that's ever tried to get a plane to the West Coast, it's not cheap, and you're not just doing that for a weekend. You're not going to catch a flight on a Friday to go home to Virginia to have to turn around and catch a flight to go back to San Diego on Sunday. That would be very hard. Yeah, it's a tough decision, and you got to be smart about it. And you want to separate that home and work. But when you're not home, it's very easy to, hey, I'm at work and I'm thinking about home. And when I'm at home, I'm away. Is everything okay at work? So I can definitely hear you there. I just real quick, I want to say again, we're on episode 9 of Behind the Helm. We're talking about Geo-Bachelor, Geographical Bachelor, that type of move. We're here with Chief Hospital Corpsman Eric Runyon, who was kind enough to come on and talk about it. He's an FMF Corpsman. If you want to know what that is, make sure you go back and listen to it when we talked about it. And so we went through like some of the pros and cons, and I want to encourage anybody who is listening now or listens later or sees this later, that if you have any other pointers or things that you think sailors or any service member, because Army, any branch can go GeoBatch. This is not just a Navy podcast. You all know that. I've had people from all the services on except for Space Force. I can't find them. They're busy searching for aliens. I don't know. Looking at potatoes. I don't know. But it's something that can happen anywhere. And the big thing is that it's voluntary. So you have to know that you're volunteering to do this, and it's a conversation that you really need to have. So as far as for you, Chief, pros, are there, out of kind of the stuff we've talked about, are there any other like kind of pros? So from what I've gotten from what we've talked about for you specifically, right? The pro is your wife has that career. She didn't have to leave that career because it's really specific to where she is, right? You're maintaining that home that you guys have set up. Those are pros, right? Would you say that there are any other pros that been like, other than like you can get a night out with the boys and you don't got to worry about it? Just kidding.
It's funny that you say that. Yes. So during the week,
mm-hmm.
You could stay as long as you want at work and don't have to worry about somebody waiting for you at home.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of my main goals Monday through Thursday is sit here and knock out evaluations, knock out advancement packages, knock out awards, stuff like that, and don't have to really worry about, I need to get home or I need to pick up the son. So that's a definitely a pro to that.
Now I will say, I want to add to that, leaders out there, if you're hearing that, because I've also seen this too, and Chief, I don't know if you have, just because you're GeoBatch and you can stay at work, okay, don't punish your guys, don't punish your crew, don't be like, well, I'm here, the old crusty chief that is at work till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night every night because he doesn't have a family to go home to. Use it exactly the way you just said, Chief. Use it to get those things done that maybe normally you wouldn't. Let your guys go see their family because they can, and that is a plus. That might not sound like a plus to somebody, like if I go GeoBatch, I get to work more. Great. Not necessarily. What we're saying is that it gives you an opportunity maybe to clean some of your plate. Where you're not in the middle of the day, where you can really sit down and hey, I'm going to get this project done, right? And it can be beneficial. And going out with the boys, like I was kind of joking, but this could be another one of those pro/cons where you really have to have security in your marriage and your relationship. Because look, if you're GeoBatch, yes, I don't get to go home to my family when normally that's what I would do, and we're not going to set. I don't. Some people might. We're not going to just set in one place. Like, you still have to find things to keep your spirits up, to entertain yourself, and that doesn't mean just like go bar hopping or whatever. But like, it's kind of unfortunate because like you might have to go do something fun to keep your spirits up, and that's hard too, because then when you're having fun, what are you doing? You're thinking about your family and how they're not there with you. So it's one of those. Another kind of pro-con, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So any other pros you can think of?
So, again, being able to catch up on fishing.
Sure.
you
Yeah, son's
know,
only 2.5. Don't worry, he'll be fishing with you soon. Yeah.
yeah, I can't wait for that day.
Yeah.
But I think you said it the best for us leaders out there, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I cut my guys at 3 o'clock today because there's nothing going on, but I'm still here at work. Again, I think geobatching in understanding that the time with my family is special,
Mm-hmm.
right? And allowing my sailors to go do the same thing,
Yeah.
to spend time with their family. Because again, the way that, the world is going, they might not have that time, or deployment might be coming up where they're not going to have that time. So give them the time now,
Yeah.
you know?
And that's a leadership choice, and I feel the same way. Maybe not all do, but I mean, I'll put my caveat again. These are my opinions, not the opinion of the Navy or the Chiefs mess or anything. 100%. If you're in port, look, you have higher authority. You have more things that you have to do. Even if your family is there, you might have to stay longer. Welcome to having rank and responsibility. Don't punish your
Absolutely.
guys and gals. I'm sorry, I got to be whatever. Don't punish your crew, especially when you know that you have an underway coming up or a deployment or right now. And we're not putting anything out that the Navy stole us because there's nothing to put out. But I mean, look at the things that are going on. Who knows, right? So you got to think of them sometimes too. I absolutely agree. So we kind of hit the pros. The pros are few and far between, but most of the time when you do it, the pros that you cling to, they're big. It's for good reasons. Outside of the stuff that we mentioned, which is quite a bit, like, are there any other kind of cons that you would want people to know, to like think about if they're having this conversation?
So, not necessarily a con, but one of the things that you can think about is if you're thinking about geobatching,
Mm-hmm.
right? You had mentioned it can be lucrative going to, you know, maybe a not so densely populated military town, right? Where maybe the cost of living is lower than going to, let's say, San Diego, where your BAH is the highest, right? You can also submit paperwork to try to get BAH from where your family resides.
Now, yes, you can, but per the ruling, what's supposed to happen is if you choose the geobatch, you get it for where you're at. Now, you can submit paperwork, especially, again, extenuating circumstance, right? Like, just an example. I'm not saying that this is 100% or anything like that. Maybe, you have a child that's has some kind of special medical need, and the specialists and stuff that he or she has to see are in the area that your family's in, and you have to take your orders to go somewhere, and maybe where you're going the BAH is less, and you're geo batching because it's voluntary, but you really need your family to stay there. That would be something that you could definitely put in for, and it would get reviewed, and it very possibly they'd be like, this is a different situation. You're not just geo batching just because. So you might get that BAH for where they're at because maybe it's more, and they're going to be there. So that's a really good point. I appreciate that. I wouldn't have thought of it that way. It's a good point.
Right, and it's a case by case basis. Obviously people have different circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
What you brought up was a great example. Being in Virginia, having one of the biggest naval hospitals
Yeah.
around, being able to provide that care for your family. But again, you're taking orders to try to benefit your career, but you don't want it to hurt your family or the care that your family may need to receive.
Yeah, 100%. Now, we kind of talked. So we've given some pros and cons. We talked about how it's voluntary, right? 2 weeks from now, I'm gonna set with somebody who got what's called unaccompanied orders, where you are ordered to go somewhere and your family does not go with you. That is a whole different ballgame. Okay. So when you're geo batching, like, so when you got your orders, your PCS orders, and you can go back a few episodes, everyone, and I go over orders and like kind of how to read those and what that is. it can be hard to read. I can tell you, I've been in the Navy a hot minute, and me and Chief were joking about, he's been in 20 years. There are times that I look at orders and I still go a little cross-eyed. You got to kind of think about it for a minute because of the way that they're written. But when you decide to geo-batch, like when you got your orders were PCS accompanied orders, right? Because it was over 6 months. You have dependents. So they're saying, just like, okay, so I moved to Virginia and I got PCS orders. So I moved with my family, got housing and everything. So that's how your orders came. And then you have to decide voluntarily that you're going to geo-batch. And you have to, when you decide to do that, you have to put in paperwork and stuff for that as well?
No, I kept my family in Virginia. And so that way, when I checked in here, I made sure the address is reflected in DEERS and NSIPs to make sure that it reflects that they're in Virginia while I'm stationed here in North Carolina. And to be honest with you, nobody really cares where your family's at, to be honest with you.
Unless there's like a major disaster. That's why we have INFAST, stuff like that. And then most of the time they're safe anyway. Or if there is a major disaster, even if it's not your immediate family, I mean, when there have been hurricanes, like stuff like that, I know that commands I've been with had to ask people, does anybody have family, like, grandparents, whatever, that are in that area? Do you need to make a call, to make sure that they're okay? We always make the joke about families and, if the Navy wanted you to have a family, they would have issued it to you. But, we've talked on the show before, they really do care for families. And there are outlets. So if you're a family member, if you're a spouse, if you are a dependent of any kind, understand that you also have rights. You also have benefits. You are eligible 100%. I talk about all the time. Military One Source is just as much your resource as it is ours. Okay? Hey, maybe you're going through a geo-bachelor situation and your spouse, male, female, doesn't matter. Don't care. Your spouse has to geo-batch. That can be very hard on you. Okay, you can go to Military One Source. You can talk to a licensed professional it's not, and for spouses, I think, sometimes it can be hard to talk to somebody in the military, right? I don't want to talk to a military doctor, because it's different. No, when you use Military One Source, these are licensed professionals out in town, civilian therapists, stuff like that. It's not saying that you have problems, but sometimes, if your spouse isn't there, you need somebody to talk to. And instead of that friend that's like, yeah, he's an idiot, like maybe you should talk to a therapist that can help you and relate to you. And, that stuff is there for you too. All right. So don't forget that you have benefits as well. And I will put out, like I do all the time, if anybody, I'm not a licensed professional in any way, but if anybody ever has questions or needs help finding those resources, by all means, message me on whatever platform, and I will help you get those resources, whether you are a military member, a spouse, a dependent, because sometimes people just don't realize. I mean, there are military members, I think, that don't even realize how much you can utilize, like Military One Source in general,
Oh, you're definitely right. It's underutilized resources that we have available that, again, not many people either know or take advantage of. And, mental health being the tip of the,
kind
concern.
of tip of the spear right now.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like Military One Source, your chaplain, especially, they can help you with counseling. In the Marine Corps, we have the Military Family Life Counselor, the MFLAC, right? They are also certified in marriage counseling as well. And again, all great resources that everybody should look into, because again, this is not easy, and there are going to be good times and bad times.
And I would encourage anybody, even if you're not in the military, Military One Source is a website that anybody can go to, and it's not just for counseling. Because I've brought it up when we've gone over PCS moves and things. There are so many resources on that website. And I will tell you, whether you're military or not, you don't have to have a CAC to log in. You can see the resources. You can read some stuff on there, and it's very well laid out. So, spouses who are dealing with moves, and maybe the military member's not there, or the military member, maybe it's their first move and they don't really know. It's a great, and sometimes the resource is it will tell you where to go, or what website to go to understand that. But still, that's better than nothing. So don't think Military One Source is just for counseling. Oh man, I mean, for moves, for finances, for all kinds of stuff. So definitely make sure to check that out always, and don't hesitate. One, even if you do the counseling, and this is for my military members, because I think that sometimes, and you being a hospital corpsman, and especially dealing with Marines, where it's like, I'm a Marine, I don't have to, I don't have to talk to nobody. One, even if it went to your command, okay, they can't hold that against you. But I think that's a fear in military members.
Absolutely.
But if you use Military One Source, it doesn't go anywhere. They ask for your name and stuff like that for them, for funding for them, but it does not get reported back, like your name, your command, any of that stuff. Same with spouses. Don't be afraid to ask to talk to somebody because, it's going to go to my husband or wife's command and it's going to make them look bad, like they're not taking care of me. No, not at all. Please don't ever think that. But if you're worried about it, there is an anonymity there, and they're there to talk to. Me and my wife did it for pre-marriage counseling, and it helped. And quite honestly, there for a while after we did that, I continued to talk to that therapist myself once a week. I was in recruiting. Recruiting was rough, and quite honestly, it was somebody that I could just talk to and blow off steam to and talk about things, so that I wasn't bringing that kind of explosiveness home. It was just somebody I could complain to for an hour a week, and it was free. And she got paid to sit there and listen to me complain, and would give me ideas and stuff and ways to deal with that, or ways to think about it that maybe I wouldn't have seen. And this wasn't somebody in the military. But they also, for your military members out there, sorry, I'm on a bit of a rant, is that there's also a peer-to-peer counseling on there where you can talk to somebody who is not like a licensed therapist, but they have been in your rank. They have been in the military. They are I think it's just a counselor, but they're not a therapist, but they have the counseling certification. So that it's somebody that maybe can relate on the military side a little bit more, but they're not like in your chain of command. So just a ton of resources, and I just think bringing that up is important when we're talking about something like Geo Bachelor, because, man, you want to talk about could possibly be real strenuous on the service member and on the family. Don't hesitate and talk to your chain of command, because believe it or not, we do care. Okay, we want you to look. If there are problems at home, that's going to affect the mission, right?
Yep.
So we want you to be in the right headspace. What else you got, Chief? What do you think?
No, I think we've covered a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you said don't hide anything from your chain of command. Like, be upfront with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my chain of command is very supportive. My battalion commander is also a Geo batch. So, sometimes we sit in his office and we talk about it, and having that commonality, and talking with each other actually is super helpful. So, I think I think you did a great job of covering everything.
I could have done it without you, man. But there's when you say that chain of command thing, there's that smoke screen, right? Like I'm a chief, so I have to be a little mysterious, okay? But you never know until you talk to somebody, right? Like, you may have guys that don't, I think that just talking to you, that your guys would. Maybe you have a guy that's geo batching, and like finding out that, oh, my chief is too, might open that up. Now, we are still military, okay? So understand that, service members, okay? There is still military, so you might get a little tough love if you're just whining to whine, and it's not, I'm going to care to a point, but if you're just kind of being a whiner about something, I might have to tell you, you know what I mean? Like, so understand that, but if you have a real issue, if you're having issues at home, God, please, like, whether it's military, one source, I mean, you should reach out to your chain of command. I know that can be really hard for people to do, and they really fear reprisal. There should not be that fear. There shouldn't be at all. You know, and I hope that you have a good chain of command that looks out for you. And if they don't, you know, I don't want to get into the weeds on that. I'll get myself in trouble. But I'm just saying, you know, we've been going for a while. Again, I just want to remind you on episode 9, season 2 of Behind the Helm, we were talking about Geo Bachelor with Chief Hospital Corpsman Eric Runyon. So thankful that you were able to do this, and you know you're currently going through Geo Batch. So you know, by all means, like I said, if you have questions or if you have more to add, always comment it, even if it's later, because somebody's going to see it. It could help them. And if you have questions specifically for Chief Runyon, look, I know him. I know the guy. Okay. So if he doesn't see it, I'll get you the answer. Just like the person on Twitter who was asking the question about Bahrain, which luckily 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk to somebody who's there and is doing unaccompanied orders, and we'll talk about that. So again, next episode, 2 weeks, March 7th, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you smash that like button, share this feed, do all those things. Chief, thank you so much for coming in and talking about Geo Batch and your personal situation, because sometimes, you know, that can be a little personal, a little hard, you know, and hopefully this information gets to the right people and it helps somebody down the line.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Brad. And it's an honor being here to share this information with everybody.
Absolutely. And I'll hit you up after the show. Feel free to just, you know, you can disconnect the call. You don't got to wait on me. I'm going to wrap it up here, and I will talk to you afterwards. All right.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, brother.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. So again, thank you all so very much. Thank you so much to our special guest. Let me, wrong button. Let me get out of this. Thank you all for tuning in. And for those of you that are out there in the listening land, Spotify and Audible and that, you know, I know the Hospital Corpsman video you didn't really get to see, but outside of that, not much was visual. This would be a great audio one to listen to, and hopefully it helps anyone. Anybody has any extra to add, or you've done Geo Batch and you have some more pros or cons or tips or things to make sure to talk about? Hey, look, I've never done it. Okay, so by all means, throw those comments, throw those messages. You know, hopefully you help somebody. Again, 2 weeks, March 7th. The plan as of right now is to have the infamous Chief Snyder, who's been on the show a few times, coming to us from Bahrain to talk about what unaccompanied orders look like. So we've talked about PCS orders. We've talked about Geo Bachelor orders. Eventually, we're going to talk about moving CONUS, which is within the United States. We're going to talk about OCONUS moving outside the United States. And obviously Chief Snyder is outside the United States, but he's on unaccompanied orders, which is a whole different thing. So make sure you tune in 2 weeks from today and learn a little bit about that too. All right. So thank you guys so very much. And until next time, have a good one.